I was 19 when it happened, a sophomore in college and still stupid enough to believe that all those lockdown drills were just boring interruptions in class, something we did because administrators wanted to feel safe. But that night taught me. Otherwise, it was late October, and the weather was already shifting into that cruel mix of cold wind and endless rain. I had just finished a late-night lab session in the science building. Most of the campus was deserted except for a few stragglers cutting across the quad with umbrellas bent backwards by the storm. I remember walking back toward my dorm when the first sirens went off. Not the city sirens, but the campus-wide lockdown alarms, a harsh pulsing tone that echoed across the empty grounds. At first I thought it was just a drill, but then my phone buzzed in my pocket. Emergency alert. Lockdown in effect. Seek shelter immediately, do not leave the building. You are in, this is not a drill. Those words made my stomach drop. The science building was already locking its doors automatically. I pulled at the glass front entrance, but it was sealed tight. My only option was to go deeper inside. The hallways were deserted, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. I could hear doors slamming in the distance as professors and grad students barricaded themselves in their labs. And then came the announcement, a woman's voice over the intercom. Steady but tense, all students and staff, please move to the designated basement shelter. Repeat, all students and staff report to the basement shelter immediately. I had never even been to the basement. The stairs down were narrow and smelled of mildew. Water dripped somewhere below, echoing like a slow heartbeat. As I descended, the noise of the storm outside seemed to vanish until all I could hear was the hum of old ventilation fans. The shelter wasn't what I expected. It looked less like a proper emergency facility and more like a forgotten storage level. Exposed pipes lined the ceiling. The walls were painted a peeling pale green. A row of flickering fluorescent lights buzzed above. There were maybe 30 of us down there. Students, a few professors, and a campus security guard who looked just as nervous as we were. Everyone huddled together on old benches and folding chairs. At first, nobody knew what the threat was. Rumors spread fast. Someone saw a man with a weapon near the library. Someone else swore there were 2 people trying to break into the dorms. Nobody knew the truth. The security guard tried to calm us down. Just sit tight. This is precautionary. We'll be fine down here. But even he kept checking his radio, frowning at the static. The storm outside must have been interfering because every transmission was garbled. Once or twice I thought I heard words, east wing, unaccounted, doors breached me, but it was impossible to be sure. Then the lights flickered, just once. But in that moment, the whole basement seemed to hold its breath. A girl sitting across from me whispered, "Did you hear that?" Everyone froze. At first I thought she was just being jumpy. But then I heard it too, faint footsteps. Not above us, not in the stairwell, but here, in the basement. The guard grabbed his flashlight and swept it across the hall that led deeper into the basement. The beam illuminated old filing cabinets, stacks of unused chairs, and a heavy metal door I had never noticed before. The footsteps stopped. The guard muttered something under his breath and moved toward the noise. Nobody followed him. We just sat in tense silence, listening as his boots clicked against the concrete floor. He reached the door and pulled at the handle. It was locked. He gave it a few hard tugs, then turned back to us, forcing a smile. Probably just pipes settling. Or water dripping. Don't worry. But his voice wavered, and he kept glancing back at that door as he returned to his seat. Minutes dragged on like hours. The storm pounded above us, rattling the pipes, masking smaller sounds. I kept telling myself it was all in my head, that my imagination was just filling in the blanks. Then the lights went out. The basement dropped into pitch-black silence. A few people gasped. Someone started crying. I felt my own chest seize up as my phone lit up in my lap. I scrambled to turn on the flashlight. Around me, others did the same. The room filled with jittery cones of light, bobbing wildly as hands shook. The security guard's voice cut through the dark. "Stay calm. Just stay calm. Backup generators will." He stopped. We all heard it. The metal door at the end of the hall was opening. The screech of rusted hinges cut through the silence like nails on a chalkboard. Slowly, painfully, the door creaked inward. A beam of light swept toward it, but the flashlight only showed an empty doorway leading into blackness. The guard shouted, "Who's there?" His voice cracked. No response. Just silence. Then, the sound of footsteps again. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. Panic spread fast. A few students bolted for the stairwell, only to find the security doors at the top sealed shut. They pounded on them, screaming for help. The rest of us backed against the wall, lights shaking as we tried to focus on that yawning doorway. The guard aimed his flashlight down the hall, his hand trembling. "Stay back," he barked, though I don't think he knew who or what he was talking to. The footsteps stopped again. Then, in the silence, something whispered, a low, rasping voice that carried through the air like smoke, too faint to understand the words, too close to ignore. I don't know what happened in the next 20 minutes. Time dissolved into a blur of panic and dread. The whispers came and went, sometimes from the hall, sometimes from right behind us, though when we turned, nothing was there. One by one, phones began to die, their flashlights fading until only a few weak beams remained. The darkness pressed closer, and then we heard the breathing. Not ours. Not human. Deep, wet, ragged breaths filling the room as if something huge was standing just out of sight, inhaling us, tasting the air between us. The guard fired his gun down the hall. The blast deafened us in the tight space. The muzzle flash lit up the corridor, but there was nothing there. Nothing but concrete walls and pipes dripping water. When the ringing in my ears faded, I realized the whispers had stopped. The breathing had stopped, but the door was still open. We stayed like that for what felt like hours. Nobody dared move. Nobody spoke. Some cried quietly into their hands. Eventually, the lights flickered back on, emergency power buzzing faintly overhead. The hall was empty. The door stood wide open. Campus police arrived maybe 30 minutes later, forcing the stairwell doors open from the outside. They herded us upstairs, asking questions, writing down names. The security guard tried to explain what had happened, but they brushed it off. "There's nobody down there," one of the officers said. We swept it twice empty, but I knew. We all knew. Something had been down there, watching us, breathing, whispering. After that night, the basement shelter was permanently sealed. Classes in the science building were moved. Nobody talked about it openly, but every student who had been there knew the truth. We avoided that building. We avoided each other, as if speaking about it might make it real again. Even now, years later, I can still hear that door creaking open in my dreams. And sometimes, when I wake in the middle of the night, I swear I can still hear it. That rasping breath hovering just behind my ear. I was 16 when our school went into lockdown. Not the practice drills, not the routine hide under the desk and wait for the all clear. No, this was real, and I swear to you, what happened that day inside the gym has never left me. It was a Friday afternoon, last period. The kind of day when students are restless, teachers tired, and everyone just wants to go home. The sky outside was dark with heavy clouds promising a storm. I was sitting in history class, half asleep, when the announcement came. "Attention staff and students, we are now in lockdown." Repeat, "We are in lockdown. Teachers, secure your classrooms immediately." The intercom clicked off. The classroom went dead silent. At first, we all thought it was a drill, but then we heard the sound, the alarm, a shrill, continuous tone echoing through the halls. That was how we knew it was real. Our teacher, Mrs. Lang, told us to move quickly. She pushed desks against the door, drew the blinds, shut off the lights, but then her radio crackled with a new order. "All students to the gymnasium immediately. Teachers, escort your classes." That wasn't standard. Normally we'd stay put. Why were they moving hundreds of kids into one massive room? But rules were rules. Mrs. Lang herded us into the hallway, joining the flood of other classrooms. The halls were chaos. Students whispering, some crying, everyone moving as fast as possible toward the gym. The gymnasium was cavernous, echoing with footsteps and hushed voices. Teachers locked the main doors behind us, pulling the heavy bolts across. Bleachers were extended, and we were told to sit tight, shoulder to shoulder. The lights hummed above, cold and bright. It almost felt safe at first, like being corralled together would protect us. But then the doors at the far end rattled. All of us turned to look. Someone was pulling at them. The teachers shouted for us to stay calm. A few of them rushed over, whispering frantically among themselves. After a minute, the rattling stopped, but the mood had changed. Every sound was magnified. Every creak of the building felt suspicious. I sat close to the middle of the bleachers trying to make myself small. I remember clutching my backpack to my chest like it was armor. Then the lights flickered. It was just for a second. But the whole gym seemed to exhale in fear. Someone whispered behind me, "What if the power goes out?" It did. The gym plunged into darkness. A few students screamed. Teachers tried to calm us, but their voices were shaky. Phones lit up one by one. Little rectangles of blue light scattered through the crowd. The glow was eerie, like floating stars in the pitch black. That's when we saw the first shadow. It moved along the far wall, tall and wrong, stretched impossibly thin across the cinder block. At first I thought it was just a trick of the light, but then it detached, peeling itself away from the wall like paper curling up. The students closest to it scrambled back, their phones shaking in their hands. The thing didn't have a face. Just a long, faceless shape blacker than the dark around it, and it was moving toward us. The teacher shouted. One threw a flashlight beam across the floor. The shadow was gone. But now the whispers started. Not from the crowd, from the air itself. Low, raspy whispers slipping through the black, circling the gym. They weren't words I understood, just sounds guttural and hungry. People started crying openly. Some tried to run for the doors only to find them still bolted shut. We were trapped. Minutes dragged on. Whispers, flickers of movement, shadows stretching where they shouldn't. The storm outside slammed rain against the roof, making it impossible to tell what noises were real and which weren't. Then came the thud. Something slammed against the gym doors, hard enough to shake the metal. Everyone screamed. The teachers pulled us further back, away from the entrance. I could see one of them gripping a baseball bat from the equipment closet, white-knuckled. Another thud. Louder. Something was trying to get in. But then I noticed something worse. The shadow wasn't at the doors anymore. It was inside. I saw it moving along the bleachers, slipping between students like smoke. Each time someone's flashlight caught it, it would vanish, only to reappear further along. A boy near the bottom row started convulsing, gasping for air as if the shadow had wrapped itself around his throat. Teachers rushed to him, but the lights blinked again. And when they came back, he was unconscious. That's when panic fully set in. Students tried climbing over the bleachers, clawing at the walls, pounding on the exits. Teachers were shouting, radios crackling with static. The gym was a madhouse of terror, and still, the shadows multiplied. I swear there were more of them now. Dozens of faceless figures sliding along the walls, merging with each other, stretching across the ceiling. Every time the lights flickered, they got closer. Phones were dying fast. One by one, those tiny blue lights winked out, plunging us deeper into darkness. All around me, kids were praying, sobbing, whispering that they wanted to go home. And then, silence. The whispers stopped. The thud stopped. Even the storm seemed to hold its breath. In that suffocating silence, I heard something new. Breathing. Not ours. Not panicked human breathing. Slow, heavy, surrounding us from every direction. I froze. My skin went cold. Something brushed against my ankle. I kicked out, but there was nothing there. Just the empty space between bleacher rows. Then the lights came back. The gym was empty. No shadows. No whispers. Nothing, except for the boy who had collapsed. His face was pale, his lips blue, his chest still. He never woke up. The lockdown ended 30 minutes later. Police arrived, storming the building, checking every hallway, every exit. They found nothing. No intruder. No sign of forced entry. The official story was that the boy had a seizure brought on by stress, that the shadows we saw were tricks of the emergency lighting, that our panic had fueled the hysteria. But I know what I saw. We all do. After that day, the gym was closed for renovations. They claimed it was electrical issues. But among students, the whispers spread. Don't go in there at night. Don't stay in the gym alone, because once the lights flicker, the shadows come back and they don't always leave. Even now, years later, I can't stand gymnasiums. The echo of footsteps on polished wood, the smell of sweat and dust. It all makes my stomach twist, and sometimes, when I pass by a darkened window at night, I catch sight of something stretched across the glass. A tall, faceless shadow, waiting for the lights to go out again. I was working the night shift at the university library when it happened. I'd been at the job for less than a month, desperate for the paycheck and honestly grateful for the peace. Nobody really comes in after 10 p.m. except for the occasional stressed-out grad student. The place was huge, 4 floors, endless shelves. My duty was simple: check the desks, reshelve the returns, and lock up at 2 a.m. But that night, something else checked in with me, and it never checked out. The first half of the night was normal. A handful of students came and went, quiet as ghosts, their laptops glowing in the dim light. By midnight, only one was left. A girl sitting on the 3rd floor, headphones in, lost in her books. At 12:15 a.m., the announcement chimed. "Attention, the library will close in 45 minutes. The girl didn't move. She never even looked up. Fine, I thought. She'll leave when I sweep through. I was on the 2nd floor when the first sound came. Not footsteps, not voices. A knocking, 3 steady taps, somewhere in the stacks. I froze, cart full of books in front of me, heart thudding. I told myself it was nothing, pipes maybe. Old buildings make old noises. But then came another 3 knocks, louder, closer. I pushed my cart faster, trying to shake it off. But when I reached the stairwell, I saw something that made my stomach twist. The girl's backpack was still on the 3rd floor desk. Her books were still open, but the chair was empty. She hadn't come down, and the library doors were locked from the inside. I climbed the stairs slowly, calling out, "Hello? Library's closing soon." No answer. The 3rd floor was silent. Silent, except for the whisper. It slid between the shelves, low and wet, like someone trying to form words underwater. I turned in a circle, flashlight beam cutting across the endless rows of books. "Hello?" I tried again, but my voice cracked. Then I saw her. The girl stood at the far end of the aisle. Except she wasn't standing right. Her body was twisted, head tilted too far to the side, arms hanging loose at unnatural angles. Her hair covered most of her face, but her mouth was wide open, and the whisper wasn't coming from around me anymore. It was coming from her. I blinked, and she was gone, just gone. Her books were still open, the chair still pulled out, her bag still there, but the aisle was empty. I backed away, pulse hammering. My radio crackled on my belt, startling me so hard I nearly dropped it. But it wasn't a voice, just static. Static that grew louder the further I walked toward the stairwell. I decided to lock up early. Screw procedure. Screw the paycheck. I hurried back to the main floor, but when I reached the front desk, the doors weren't just locked. They were chained. Thick, rusted chains wound around the handles, padlocked shut. I hadn't done that, and the keys on my ring didn't match the lock. The whisper rose again, surrounding me now, slipping between the stacks, beneath the tables, curling down the stairwell. I tried the side exits, chained, emergency doors, chained. I was trapped, and then the lights went out. The darkness was crushing. I yanked out my phone for light, the tiny glow trembling in my hand. The whisper turned into laughter now, high, broken laughter bouncing off the walls. I stumbled through the shelves, desperate for an exit. Any exit. That's when I saw her again. The girl. She was crouched on top of one of the bookcases, fingers digging into the wood, head bent at that impossible angle. Her mouth was still open, but the laughter wasn't coming from her. It was coming from behind me. I spun around and saw shadows, tall, thin, faceless shapes sliding between the shelves. Too many to count. Each time I swung the light, they froze. But the moment I moved again, they crept closer. I bolted for the stairwell, pounding up toward the 4th floor. My footsteps echoed, chased by the whispering, the laughter, the dragging sounds of something not far behind. The 4th floor was worse. The air was heavy, suffocating, like the walls themselves were closing in, and everywhere I looked, the shelves were wrong, tilted, broken, filled with books that shouldn't exist. Their titles weren't in any language I recognized. The covers pulsed like veins under skin. I didn't touch them. I ran to the windows. They were bricked over from the outside. Every single one. The laughter swelled. Overlapping voices now, male and female, young and old, all tangled together in a horrible chorus. And in the center of it, I heard my own name, whispered, over and over. I backed into the stairwell, ready to fight my way down. When the girl appeared again, closer this time, Her head twitched in little jerks like a broken puppet. Her mouth opened wider, impossibly wide, until her jaw cracked, and the sound that poured out wasn't laughter or whispers, it was screaming. Hundreds of voices screaming all at once. I don't remember running. I don't remember falling. I just remember waking up outside, sprawled on the wet grass as the storm broke overhead. The library stood behind me, dark and silent, its doors unchained. My phone said 2:03 a.m. I never saw the girl again, but I've never set foot in that building either. The university keeps it open. Students still cram inside during finals, still whisper about late-night study sessions. But whenever I pass it, I swear the windows look darker than they should, and sometimes, if I'm close enough, I hear it. The knocking. 3 steady taps.